everybody, and welcome to the show being the court of public opinion from the garage. Peter Clayton behind the camera, I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. This is the Big Wednesday show. And I think this is great because we've consolidated from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're doing one program a week, which is on Facebook and, of course, podcast all around the world. So I have no idea where you're watching this, but welcome. And the big broadcast from the dining room table on Friday morning, 9 to 12. I'll give you the number later and you can call us on any subject you like. JeremyCordeaux.com, live streaming. Again, on the World Wide Web and around the world. But the Big Wednesday show. I hope you're well, I hope you're happy, I hope you've had a good week. The RBA meeting yesterday, interest rates will stay the same, that's 4.35%. But importantly, they've not ruled out an increase, pointing out that there will be upward pressure on inflation. I guess there always is, giving the government clear notice to keep a tight rein on the economy with its budget to be handed down next Tuesday. Now, I'm going to stick with my prediction, which is one possible rate cut before Christmas. Many were saying there would be 3 or 4. I think they've recanted. They're not saying that quite so often these days. But I don't think they'll put the interest rates up again. Just a question of keeping spending under control. And they can jawbone that. They can talk us out of being too enthusiastic at the cash register. They can. Does the same job. But you know, 4.35% is still very low interest rate by historical standards. Very low. Count on 5 to 7% generally across the board. That's what I've always worked on. Can't borrow money on any other pretext, any other anticipation. That's what history tells us. 50 years. Pete, do you remember when we got metricated?
Oh yes, yeah. that song that was every time you turn the telly on, yeah.
It's 50 years.
Yeah.
They never actually successfully metricated me, I got to tell you.
No, I still go back to feet and inches, you know.
Well, if you fly an aeroplane, everything's in feet and inches. Yeah. Hopefully feet. If it gets down to inches, we're in real trouble. But I reckon the whole metric thing is a bit like climate change. A con. The whole world is going metric. We'll be left behind. No, it didn't. No, it wasn't. And we weren't. It cost a fortune, and I don't know what it achieved. Pretty close to nothing, if you ask me. One of the wonders of the entertainment world, they tell me, Lego Masters on Channel 9. One of the top shows in Australia on television. Why? You ever seen it, Pete?
Briefly. I am not the least bit interested.
I've never seen it. Yeah. Can't imagine what the attraction is. The host, Hamish, is paid $2 million a year to front that program. Listen, on Friday, ring me and tell me why you watch Lego Masters if you do. I would love to know why. I really would. Congratulations to James Webb, who in Texas has been crowned the world champion sausage eater. He managed to put away 51 sausages in less than 10 minutes. 51 sausages. Just last year, he consumed 276 chicken wings in 12 minutes at the New York's Wing It On. That's what it was called, Pete. Not Bring It On, Wing It On.
Only in America. That's
only in
all I can
America.
say.
New York's Wing It On, beating the previous record, and he doesn't look fat. Not at all. He just roams the world eating and getting paid. What a job. While here at home, Janine Kim is her name. She sheared 358 sheep in less than 8 hours. She's been shearing for about 11 years, in training for 12 months, didn't break the record because there wasn't one. She set the record. She set it. Only 4% of shearers are women. Now, I could understand that. I mean, if there is a back-breaking job in the world, it's got to be shearing sheep. People who saw her record-establishing session said that most of the sheep that she was shearing were bigger than she was. What a woman. Wow. South Australia has just launched its own inquiry into supermarket pricing. Well, good luck with that. I can see a lot of lawyers rubbing their hands together and a lot of big, thick manila folders sitting on shelves gathering dust, but not much else. We are, according to this, which I'll tell you much more about on Friday, we are severely stressed. Professor Nicholas Biddle from the Australian National University has run the nation through, I guess you could probably call it a stress test. I hope to have him on the show on Friday, because I think that would be interesting. I don't know what stresses you. You might like to enlighten us on that. And according to the Population Research Institute, young people are not proud to be Australian. Melbourne is the least patriotic city in the entire country. Also on the show on Friday morning, to tell us more, will be Dr. Catherine Betts from the Institute. Speaking of things academic, I wonder why the Union of Students didn't campaign to stop this insane indexation of HECS fees long ago. Well, I guess it would have been a bit difficult because the whole idea of HECS fees was Paul Keating and the Labor government of the era, the late 1980s. It was their idea. How could the union possibly say anything about that? Anyway, the Students' Union has come out with the suggestion that HECS fees should be frozen. This is the union that demands that every student belong. Even though compulsory unionism is illegal in Australia, somehow they go under the radar. Don't ask me how or why. They would seem to be the exception. And what do they do for students? The students they represent? I don't know. They could have said something about the indexation of fees years and years ago. Leaked from next Tuesday's budget. Up in lights. Relief for students. There are some 3 million students who owe about $79 billion indexed to annual inflation, which last year saw a hike in those fees of 7.1%, which was quite a whack. What this government is proposing is that for the average student who owes $25,000, $26,000, which he or she doesn't have to pay back or start to pay back until he or she is making money from that degree, But this move in the budget will save the student about $1,200. $1,200. Big bloody deal. That'll make a little difference, I suppose, but not much. It goes to show you, you know, how far out of touch these people in Canberra or their advisors really are. I mean, for a budget leak, and there are plenty of those, God, purposely done. I mean, how naive is the media? Why don't they call it out for what it is? Stage management. But for a budget leak, that's pretty pathetic, really. Pretty pathetic. I hope ASIO is keeping an eye on the pro-Palestine demonstrations at universities, university campuses across Australia, but particularly Sydney University. Look, kids are easily led, manipulated. I think that's pretty obvious. Mark Scott, the former head of the ABC, he is now in charge of Sydney University. I'll bet he won't do what has been done in most countries, which was just sweep these people up and remove them from the campus. It's what's happened at Columbia University, UCLA, all over America. Free Gaza, they scream. Free Gaza. Do they mean free Gaza from Hamas? Huh? I don't think so. No. These students are easily led, stupid, naive. But what can we expect? They should, of course, be knowledgeable, inquiring, intelligent, but they ain't. And speaking of students, the Yarra Valley Grammar School, I understand a prestigious Victorian private school for boys and girls, they've suspended a group of male students, they've dismissed 2 of them, for publishing a disturbing and disrespectful appraisal, a list, if you like, of female students. They rated them or judged the girls on their appearance. They are, of course, just behaving like teenagers, and I'm sure that the girls would probably have a similar, but perhaps a more subtle judgment of the boys. But listen, they're children. The headmaster has, as I say, suspended the boys and reported them to police. Dismissed 2 of them. Now, when you get reported to the police like this, serious charges could be laid and lifelong consequences could ensue. Now, I know that males are in the crosshairs of the woke at the moment, and where that started, I don't know. Was it Harvey Weinstein, or was it Me Too, or was it the casting couch? I've got no idea. But it's a recent phenomenon. Teenagers do silly things, or people do silly things. Their parents do silly things. But the parents are the ones I'd like to talk to, actually. They might say something like, boys will be boys. Well, it's usually what the boys' schools say. I'm not sure about the co-ed schools. But I like to say, as the twig is bent, so shall grow the tree. I think they all should go and take a cold shower. Don't ruin young lives over an offensive but harmless stunt. How it got reported, I don't know, because these things sort of whiz around the playground without it really being made public all that often. I'm sure this sort of thing and worse. And by the way, just thinking about it, the kids and their parents would probably watch social media, reality television. I'm thinking of The Bachelor. The Bachelorette, or worse still, Married at First Sight. It's all about people being judged on their appearance. School will reflect what goes on at home, where perhaps the teachers could gently explain a better way. But make no mistake, the big wide world that school is preparing the kids for, out there, people will be judged on their appearance every day, time and time again. Welcome to reality.
Just as a side, would Taylor Swift have got where she was if she wasn't so pretty and so... I mean, it's the real world.
I don't know, but I've read that she was bullied at school.
Really?
And she had a fairly hard time at school.
Yeah. But she's very attractive and she's... Look,
yeah?
Good looks are an advantage in life. We all know that.
Yes, I know.
With job applications, all this sort of stuff. It's a fact of life.
And if you don't have that natural asset, you have to work on alternatives. You've got to work on the assets that you have. And that's what you should concentrate on. I mean, I regard that whole thing as, in Melbourne, as not a life-threatening or career-threatening event for these kids. It's a silly experience which should teach them a lesson. Nothing more, I don't think. You might disagree, and if you do, please call me. And you can do that. My telephone number, I always write it down in case I get it wrong, on Friday morning at the dining room table, 0491 65 68 60. Love to hear your comments on it. Your recollections of school days. Andrew Giles. Andrew Giles. Let me talk to you about Andrew Giles, Minister for Immigration. He is accountable for allowing the ankle bracelet to be removed from the alleged attacker of that Perth couple. I mean, did you see the bruises?
Oh, yes, terrible.
78-year-old woman beaten senseless by this guy, allegedly. Another person, released detainee, is arrested in Melbourne for threatening police with a knife. Oh no, it wasn't the minister. No, it was the at arm's length Border Control Committee. Okay, who appoints the committee? Ducking and weaving. That's what I see. Weasel words I hear. Sunday, just this Sunday gone by, yet another tragedy, this time in Perth. A 16-year-old boy who had been on a watch list for 2 years. 16, on a watch list for 2 years, was shot dead as he attempted to kill a police officer with a large knife. It is said that he had been radicalized. One assumes in a mosque or online. These things don't just happen by osmosis. Now, he had come to the attention of police when he was 13, believe it or not. The parents didn't know? Wow. I wonder, did they care? In America, it's been established that in a similar case, the parents should have known. It's important to note that this guy was in Western Australia. He was not an Islamic immigrant. He was an Australian, born and bred. Now, with Peter Cromley, he went out and he shot fellow students. The court ruled that his parents should have known. They will probably appeal, but they've been sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. Both of them, mother and father. Don't know what you think of that one either. I remember reporting it to you when it happened and remarking that it was a slippery slope. We start to be held responsible for what our kids do. Wow. So whether our kids are mischievous, disrespecting women, or harbouring radical Islamic views, it is, as parents, it would seem, our responsibility to know and do something. Now, as I say, if you disagree with any of that, do call me on Friday.
I think the problem, Jeremy, goes to the education system.
Well,
lack of respect, lack of discipline, lack of respect for authority. It all comes from the education system.
Yeah, well, as the twig is bent, as I often say. But looking at the whole landscape at the moment, there are so many ways in which we can lose our country. Quite scary if you watch television. I'm talking about the news programs. You can lose your country through invasion, full-on assault, of course. You can lose by stealth, stupidity. But it amounts to the same thing, the same result. But probably the worst way to lose your country is by apathy. And that's what's happening in England, most obviously in England, and in various countries the world over. And if we don't do something, it's going to happen here. And it is not racist to talk about it. It's in fact patriotic, nationalistic to talk about it. Once people arrive from anywhere, for any reason, and with families having 12 children and the homegrown Australian having no more than 1 or 2, or perhaps none, what has happened in the UK will happen here. I think a policy that looks carefully at favouring white Christian immigrants is essential. Very similar to the Labour Party's policy of the 1950s, which, if you cast your mind back, or if you are of my vintage or Pete's vintage, you will know served the country very, very well. Discriminatory? I don't know. It was basically a country exercising its right to choose. People can choose to come to Australia, and we can choose to accept them. Or not. We have a right to preserve our culture. Now what I'm saying here is not radical. We have a right to preserve our culture as every country does. Just as the people of Islam and the Middle East do, and India, and China, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, most African countries. I noticed with interest that the President of the United States accused some of these countries on the weekend of being xenophobic. Xenophobic? No. I think they're exercising their rights. They're trying to protect and preserve their culture, their heritage, traditions, their nation. I think, you may disagree with me and do it at the dining room table on Friday morning, but I think perfectly reasonable and not racist. The UK is virtually lost to the British. Unrecognisable. Overrun by people from other places. And more to come. Every day. The question is this what we want? Because now is the time to have the discussion.
Jeremy, can I just add something there?
Yeah.
You know, I was in the travel industry and I enjoyed the Pacific Islands.
Yeah.
As you travel around those islands, Tonga, Cook Islands, they all say we are not going to turn out like Hawaii. We are going to keep our culture.
Yeah, it's their right.
That's their right.
Absolutely, it's their right. I think we need to look carefully at the Australia we love. We can be invaded in many ways. Are we prepared to surrender our country to immigration? Surrender our culture and way of life? If the majority of people say yes, well, it's a democracy. We'll go along with it. But there are, of course, people who will come to this country who don't want a bar of democracy. And all they have to do is outnumber us. But why would this drop-kick government not only allow, but welcome, legislate, facilitate a takeover, a cultural takeover of Australia? The Aboriginals wouldn't have it. These guys, I'm talking about the federal Albanese government, they think about the world. The world. We need a nationalist government to look after Australia and Australia's future and Australia's people. But if you want to come and join our wonderful country, black, white, Muslim, Christian, Protestant, Hindu, heathen, doesn't matter. But don't try and take us over, please. Why would any government, by the way, put a known refugee advocate in charge of immigration? Make him, in fact, Minister for Immigration and give him all the levers that control that very important, sensitive part of government's responsibility. And then, of course, they don't take responsibility. No, it's ridiculous. But this government, who would subject us to discomfort and expense to save the world from climate change, when we contribute next to nothing to global emissions, but we have to save the world, we are letting them do this to us. It's okay if that's what you want, because if the majority of people want this, terrific. But be aware of it. In Western Australia, the Imam who fronted the media had a wonderful message, which I thought was fantastic. I wrote it down. His message was of love for all and hatred for none. I think that's fantastic. It's a lovely slogan and beautiful words. Now, an Imam is a scholar of the Islamic world. As I say, beautiful words. And I must assume he's read the Quran. And I can't pretend it's easy to read. But if you read the Quran, unless I'm making some terrible mistake for which I would apologize immediately, but from what I have read, it's about hatred, violence, and death for Christians, non-believers, and the infidel. It's about the installation of Sharia law. Now, if I'm wrong about this, I'd love some Muslims to give me a ring on Friday and tell me what I've got wrong.
You are not wrong. You are not wrong.
I've read it.
No.
I don't think I'm wrong. But we are for love of all and hatred for none. As I say, beautiful words. Ah, dear, 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 dear. The electric car push is a great government-sponsored con, another one. Even the implementation of this fuel efficiency standards thing, important in America, yes, because they've got so many more cars. It's a big problem, but not necessary in Australia. When you buy a conventional car, you have a useful asset. Buy an electric car and you're stuck. And this government doesn't care. It's promoting electric cars through things like the fuel standards thing. People are being manoeuvred into it. They are hell-bent, one way or the other. We are going to get you into this bad technology, which happens to, of course, be dangerous, with the batteries blowing up and whatnot. Expensive, because the cars are more expensive. Hard to repair, sometimes impossible to repair. Very hard to insure, or at least very expensive to insure. And of no use to the environment.
Sorry again, Jeremy. Do you think the government has considered the loss of tax revenue on petrol?
They'll find another way of doing that.
Yes, registrations, licence fees, I guess.
Oh, they'll lift them up. They'll do something.
But they've got to get the money somewhere.
The government have no option but to come to us for the money they love to spend. But it's up to us to do something about them. You know, with electric cars, you could even say they're bad for the environment, with the costly disposal of the batteries at the end of a relatively short life, seven years, something like that. Nobody's given any thought to the disposal of those batteries, and of course, when all their ill-conceived ideas hit the wall, guess what? They won't be there. No, they'll be gone. They'll be gone. Not accountable. Frankie Valli of the Four Seasons. Pete, would you believe he's 90 years old?
Yeah, I heard that, yes. Yeah.
Oh, bless him. He's been awarded his own star, about bloody time, of course, on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, along with Bob Cordeaux. Bob Cordeaux and Bob Crew wrote some wonderful songs together, but they were all part of that era when, I don't know, men were men and movies really moved and music was really lovely to listen to. Dear. The Domestic Violence National Cabinet meeting, which occurred last Wednesday, threw up, well, not very much. You would have thought that these guys would have gone into that meeting with some ideas, a plan. Anthony Albanese announced that he would bring together the leaders of the nation to handle this domestic violence coercive behaviour crisis. Great, great. Well, what we got was the Prime Minister announcing, guess what? Money. I'll throw money at it. $925 million, that's almost $1 billion. There is no indication that the states have spent the money previously allocated, by the way, and they weren't even questioned on that subject. I guess, well, costs money to set up a bureaucracy. Well, let's set up a bureaucracy, maybe a helpline. We can't have it manned 24 hours a day. It'll have to be peopled 24 hours a day. I wonder if men are going to be catered for. There are henpecked, bullied men. That is true. Not only women, sadly. First, people have to ask for help. This is where the resistance is. People say, I won't ask for help. It'll get better. It'll get better. I'll give him one more chance. he doesn't mean it. Or he or she says always sorry. Sorry. Physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse and harassment, bullying, financial bullying, spiritual abuse. What is that? How are you going to define all of this? Because you're going to keep people accountable for it. Must be able to be defined. What is normal? And who decides? This new money will not flow until July next year. A lot of people can and will die in that time. It's kicking the can down the road. A lot of fatalities on that road, ladies and gentlemen. The system seems broken to me. You can't fix this sort of social problem with money. It's like the NDIS. Money, 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 and waste. And the more money you spend, the more money you have to spend. Is usually the way it goes. In many cultures, women are disrespected. The males are brought up that way. That's what they call normal. Apart from culture, it could be, well, jealousy, alcohol, drugs, poverty. Could be the home from where we came. The school, from the school we went to. The neighborhood we grew up in. The books we read, the movies we see, the stuff on television, social media. Examples that are set for us as our young, pliable, ever-absorbing minds grab it all in. As the twig is bent, so shall grow the tree. It's not about money. Money is for winning elections, grandstanding, and wasting. Not fixing problems. I've been talking about domestic violence for as long as I have been on the air. And that's 60 years, more than 60 years. I got into radio in 1962. So that's 62 years. A common thing for people to say is, I was provoked. I didn't mean it. It won't happen again. But you see, it wouldn't matter how badly or how much someone was provoked. There is no excuse for hitting a woman. And people don't suddenly become violent, do they? There would have to be history, evidence of previous bad behaviour. And if a woman sees this, she should run a mile. And what part has the explosion in online dating had on all of this, I wonder? This push right, push left thing. That's as close to playing Russian roulette as any woman can possibly get. Don't play Russian roulette. Have I got time to... Pete?
To do what?
Well, I've got to remind everyone about my lovely sponsors. Jim Elder sent me this, which is the invitation to his next auction, which is coming up. I think it's on the 19th of May. I don't know how much he spends on these catalogues, but they are absolutely beautiful. They are in themselves a work of art. Work of art. Anyway, Sunday the 19th of May at 1 o'clock, Jim Elder, and you can drop in to Melbourne Street, North Adelaide, 106 Melbourne Street, North Adelaide, or you can talk to Jim I don't think he gives me a phone number here, does he? I should know it off by heart. I'll tell you about it next Wednesday. There's plenty of time. There's a wonderful Norman Lindsay. Beautiful. And of course, our other great sponsor is the... what are you signing for me?
I need to change the SD card.
You need to change the SD card. Well, you'll have to do an edit.
I will have to do an edit.
Because I haven't done the dates yet.
We'll just take a break here. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
You're right for take two?
Yes.
I pride myself on we don't do edits. It's only if something goes wrong technically that we stop. And that's just because our SD card and the way the camera's set up, I guess, it goes for half an hour. So if I run over half an hour, which in this new elongated Wednesday edition of the Court of Public Opinion we do, and we're very happy to. Yes, I mentioned Jim Elder, Fine Art, and his upcoming auction, which is the 19th of May at 1 o'clock. And he's in Melbourne Street, North Adelaide. And next week you'll be able to go and have a look at every one of these paintings that's in this catalogue. Every one will be there for people to come and look at. And they are really beautiful. Something to hang on the wall. It's also an investment. And of course you can talk to him about paintings that you might like to get appraised, which he will do. And you might find one of your paintings hanging on his wall at his next auction. And the other sponsor we have, of course, is the Rising Sun Inn. And that's in Kensington. Their telephone number is 8333-0721. And without doubt, it would be, quite honestly, the most atmospheric, interesting, heritage-listed pub, or Grant, who owns it, says it's an inn. Well, it's been called the Rising Sun Inn for as long as I can remember, and that's about 40 years. Beautiful food, great selection of wines, fantastic atmosphere. And as we get into winter, the open fires are fantastic. Camaraderie is lovely. The service is great. You'll love it. It'll become one of your favourite places. The Rising Sun Inn. It's just off Kensington Road, just a stone's throw from the city. 8333-0721. Let Grant know that I suggested that you call and make a booking. Now let me wish you a happy birthday and a happy wedding anniversary. Today, it is May 8, 1886, Coca-Cola was invented on this day. Golly, the 8th of May, 1886. Its creator was John S. Pemberton, and it first went on sale at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta, Georgia. In 1919, the Coca-Cola Company was sold for $25 million. Got no idea what Coca-Cola Company's worth today, but a lot more than that. Yes, Coca-Cola, golly. And it was really sold as a therapeutic thing, wasn't it, Pete? It was
snake oil, you know, the
it was
snake
a medication,
oil
or it was sort of,
yeah. It had cocaine in it.
Cocaine, yes. Yeah. Cocaine was in it. No wonder it was popular. Not that I've ever tried cocaine. Have you, Pete?
No.
No, I haven't either. No. Interesting. The Federal Labor Party, happy birthday to Labor, founded in Australia, must be, well, obviously the oldest political party in the country, founded by J.C. Watson. Well, he was the leader anyway. 1901 was the year. Georges Peppard, US actor, died. He was only 69. Best known for film roles opposite Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Also starred as Hannibal Smith in the TV series The A-Team. I remember when I took a whole bunch of listeners down to the South Pole when I was at 5DN, and Marty Smith thought it would be a very good idea if I got my wife, Kari, to come in and do the show. Well, she did a good job. I was a little bit worried about that. Mind you, job sharing is a big thing these days. I could do one day, she could do the other. No, it didn't quite work out like that. But I remember Marty said to her, who would you like to have on the show? Who would you like to talk to? And she'd had this thing about George Papard for years and years and years. So Marty, bless his heart, being the executive producer of the radio station, got him on the phone for her. And I don't know what George Papard made of it. It was very funny. She said, the only reason I'm talking to you is that my husband has gone to the South Pole. And he said, oh, I heard it, I listened back to it. Oh, he said, does he do that often? Very funny. Very funny. Dear, oh dear, the things you remember. On Friday, I hope to have Mike Smith back on the program. Mike Smith is taking his seaplane around Australia, reenacting the flight that was made back in 1924. So 100 years on, he's reenacting the seaplane flight around Australia. It's never been done before, and I don't think anybody has ever done it like that since. But Mike Smith runs he runs a distillery, he runs a motion picture theatre, or 6 theatres or 7 theatres or something, and he loves flying. He's a very interesting guy. Anyway, he's promised that he will be somewhere where I can talk to him on Friday morning. And the reason I mention that is that this is the day, 1914 was the year, a little bit before 1924, but this was the day in 1914, the first seaplane flown in Australia by Maurice Guillaux, Guillaaux. He flew the plane at Double Bay in Sydney. I've got no idea for how long or where he went, but the plane took off. There's a big flying boat base just down the road from Double Bay, in Rose Bay, and that's where they all sort of live. Don Rickles, US comedian, was born 1926. Oh, that's an important one. Victory in Europe, VE Day today. It was proclaimed in World War II, 1945, May 8, this very day. Australia-wide peace marches protest participation in the Vietnam War. On this day in 1970, Japanese, American and Australian naval forces clash in the Battle of the Coral Sea. It ended after 4 days. HMAS Hobart and Australia were involved in the battle, with the Japanese around Port Moresby in northern Queensland. The Japanese fleet eventually turned back and abandoned its attempt to capture Port Moresby. The greatest loss the Americans had in the Battle of the Coral Sea, which we could not have won without the Americans, obviously, was the loss of the aircraft carrier, the Lexington, which I think I read somewhere recently they found. I don't know what else I can tell you. Oh, Ricky Nelson was born. He died at the age of 45, just a kid. He was 45. His career began in 1952. He appeared with his parents and brother in the TV series The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Hits included Hello Mary Lou, Goodbye Sue, Sweet Mary Lou, I'm so in love with you, Poor Little Fool, It's Late. You remember all these, Pete?
Yes.
It's late. Da, 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 da. Ah, God, I'm glad I was born when I was born and I could enjoy all these wonderful songs. Travelling Man. His last one, I suppose his last hit would have been Garden Party. He's a funny fellow. He flew an aeroplane. He flew a DC-3. In fact, that's how he died. He was flying his DC-3. He used to go from place to place, from concert to concert, to gig, and he would fly his DC-3, and it came down. which is a pity, obviously. But the DC-3, of course, was one of the most reliable aeroplanes in the world. Scott Robert Thompson patented the rubber tyre, 1847. I think I've about covered everything. Oskar Schindler and his wife, Emily, were honoured for saving 1,200 Jews during World War II in a ceremony on the Avenue of the Righteous in Jerusalem on this day in 1962. Film and television production and distribution studio and owners of the current Channel 10 network in Australia, Paramount Pictures, is founded on this day in 1912. I do believe that Channel 10, they are putting, well, the whole Paramount empire is on the chopping block. It's going to be sold. And Don Rickles, American comedian, he was born in Queens in 1926. Funny man, Don Rickles. Made a living out of insulting people, but he did it so eloquently. So entertainingly, you wouldn't believe it. Now, thank you very much for viewing our... Did that go click?
No, we're still okay.
I hear a click, I worry. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed our elongated Wednesday edition of the Court of Public Opinion, now 1 day a week on Facebook and as a podcast, and of course our 3-hour live show on Friday morning, live streaming from the dining room table. I'll remind you of that number again to call us, 0491 65 68 60. I'll be there. I hope you will be. Peter Clayton behind the camera. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux, and we'll be back in the garage come next Wednesday. Thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, and believe in yourself.